My name is Sophie. I am a student from France. I want to improve my English, so I decide to go to London for 1 month. I arrive in London on a cold, rainy day. Everything is new for me. The streets are busy with many buses and taxis. I hear people speaking English everywhere. Some people speak very fast. I cannot understand them. I find my way to my small hotel. In the lobby, I try to ask the lady at the desk about the weather, but she talks too fast for me. I feel a little scared. I know my English is not so good. The next day, I go to my new English school. I meet my teacher, Mrs. Smith, and the other students. We sit in a circle and introduce ourselves. Some students come from China, Brazil, and Spain. I say, "Hello, my name is Sophie. I am from France." The other students smile. Mrs. Smith asks about my English skills. I tell her, "I read English okay, but speaking is difficult for me. I want to improve my speaking and listening." Mrs. Smith nods. She says we will practice our speaking and listening every day in class. I feel better and more excited to start the class. In our first class, Mrs. Smith explains how we will learn English. She says we will speak English every day about many different topics. She asks us to talk about our families, jobs, hobbies, our countries, and more. This way, we can practice real conversations. Mrs. Smith says many students only study grammar rules from textbooks, but this is not the best way. She says we need to use English as much as possible. This will help us learn faster. For example, we play a game. Mrs. Smith gives us cards with conversation questions. My card says, "Where are you from?" My partner is Rosa from Brazil. I ask Rosa my question. She answers, "I'm from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil." Then Rosa asks me her question. "What do you like to do on weekends?" I say, "On weekends I like to meet friends at a cafe." We continue asking and answering many questions. My speaking is slow, but Rosa listens patiently. After 10 minutes, I feel I can speak a little better. The words come easier. I also learn new words from Rosa, like beaches and barbecues. Mrs. Smith is right. Learning from textbooks is boring. Conversation with my classmates is a fun way for me to practice English. I enjoy talking about real life. And I remember my new English words I learned from my partners. I'm happy I will keep speaking English every day in class. This method is helpful for me to become confident using new vocabulary and phrases. Every Wednesday, we have reading day in English class. Mrs. Smith says reading helps us learn lots of new vocabulary. But reading can be difficult for us students. Mrs. Smith shows us a technique to use when we read. It helps with learning many new words. First, we choose a reading about something we like. For example, I like art, so I find a story about a painter. This makes reading more fun for me. As I read, I use a dictionary. I look up words I don't know. My story uses words like canvas, landscape, and brush strokes. I search for meanings in my dictionary. I say the new words aloud to practice pronunciation. Seeing new words in the dictionary helps me remember them. Sometimes I understand the new word from the sentence. For example, she painted a beautiful landscape. I realize a landscape is an outdoor nature scene. Knowing the meaning from the story also helps me remember vocabulary. After 30 minutes, I finish reading my story. Mrs. Smith asks me to tell my partners about the painter. I describe the painter's life and his art studio. I feel proud that can speak about my story. My partners understand me, and I use my new vocabulary too. I learned so much from reading stories than talking about them. Reading has helped grow my vocabulary every Wednesday. I'm excited to read about new topics and learn more new words. In week 2 of English class, we talk about part-time jobs. I want to find a job so I can practice English outside of school too. I ask my classmates if they work. Ahmed from Egypt says he works at a clothes shop on weekends. He helps customers choose shirts and trousers. Rosa works at a pizzeria 2 nights a week. She serves food and talks to customers in English. I ask them how they found their jobs. Ahmed says many shops put signs in their window when they need workers. Rosa found her job online on a website for students seeking jobs. After class, Rosa shows me the student jobs website on my phone. So many good jobs are available. I see openings at a bookstore, a bakery, and a flower shop. Working with customers will let me practice my new conversational English. I decide to apply at the flower shop near my hotel. The next Saturday, I have an interview with the owner, Mrs. Bell. Speaking is difficult for me at first, but Mrs. Bell is patient. She hires me for 3 days a week. Now I can practice my English outside of school too. Ahmed and Rosa give me good advice for using English at my new job. I'm happy to work among beautiful flowers and use English with customers. My part-time job will really help me improve. My English school has many after-school activities. I want to meet more students, so I join the women's football team. On Tuesday and Thursday, we play football for 2 hours at a park near my school. My teammates are 12 women from countries like Turkey, Mexico, Japan, and Chile. Some speak English well, and some are still learning like me. But we all love football. We run passing drills and play small matches. My new friend Simone helps teach me terms like goal kick and penalty area. Learning soccer words helps me practice specific vocabulary. The real fun starts when we divide into teams of 6 for mini games. I play striker and goalkeeper. On the first match day, my team wins 3-2. The women congratulate my goal. My speaking gets quicker and more natural as I call for the ball. Here, pass to me. After practice, we get dinner together. We talk about football stars from different countries over burgers and chips. My teammates politely wait when I search in my dictionary for words. They help me pronounce new terms. I discover players from women's leagues around the world. Football club has given me so much English practice on the field and with friends. Active games combined with conversation is the perfect way for me to improve my new language. I'm so fortunate to learn English while enjoying sports with an international group every week. In my second week of classes, we have a new student named Lucas. He is from Brazil. When Lucas speaks, he looks shy. I cannot hear him clearly from the back of class. Mrs. Smith welcomes Lucas. She asks what English skills he would like to improve. Lucas says, "My reading and listening are okay, but I want to get better at speaking clearly. My friends say my pronunciation is difficult to understand sometimes. Do you have any tips to help me pronounce words better?" "Excellent question," says Mrs. Smith. Pronunciation can be hard because English has different mouth sounds than Portuguese. Let me teach you all my favorite technique for improved pronunciation. Mrs. Smith introduces us to shadowing. This means listening to a recording of English, then repeating the words exactly. It's like an echo. We find short news clips to shadow. As we echo the broadcaster, we copy their mouth shapes, say rhythms, and pronunciation. At first, I feel shy shadowing aloud in class, but we all sound funny, so I laugh and relax. Soon, I notice my pronunciation sounds more natural. The words flow smoothly, like the native speaker's recording. Lucas thanks Mrs. Smith for the great recommendation. We agree to practice shadowing at home too, using podcasts and television clips. Changing my mouth's muscle memory is hard, but this new technique gives me hope I can sound like a true English speaker. Mrs. Smith explains more about English pronunciation challenges. She says our mouths get used to shaping sounds from our first languages as babies. After years of practice, these mouth shapes become muscle memory. But some English sounds are made with different tongue and lip positions. For example, Lucas makes a V sound with his teeth touching his bottom lip. In English, the sound is made with teeth on the top lip. After years speaking Portuguese, it's very difficult to create new mouth shapes. This is why shadowing helps retrain our mouth muscles. As we repeat after native speakers, we force our mouths into proper tongue and lip placement for English. It feels strange at first, like exercising new muscles. But over time, shadowing builds this muscle memory. We watch a video about shadowing techniques. The teacher on the video repeats "very happy" many times, carefully pronouncing each syllable. Then we all try it aloud. Very happy, very happy, very happy. I focus on exactly matching her mouth shape, feeling how my lips purse on the V sound. After a few minutes, my mouth gets tired. Shadowing is hard work, but I hear my pronunciation improve with every practiced phrase. The other students also sound less Brazilian, Chinese, Turkish. Instead, we all sound more generically North American. Mrs. Smith is right that shadowing takes some silly effort, but creating new mouth muscle memory will help my pronunciation eventually sound perfect. I'm excited to keep exercising through this effective new technique. We continue practicing the shadowing technique every day in class. We take turns finding short audio clips, then repeating after the speaker. Podcast interviews are the best to shadow because they speak clearly at a steady pace. I notice improvements in my pronunciation when I shadow. Mrs. Smith also hears our progress and gives us compliments. She says, "Lucas now speaks very clearly, and my English sounds almost native." This motivates us to shadow more at home. Soon students share creative ways they practice shadowing by themselves. Simone watches cooking videos on mute so she can repeat the chef's words aloud. Rosa found an English learning app with interactive games for shadowing phrases. Mrs. Smith mentions another idea. Before important conversations, take 10 minutes to shadow. This warm-up gets your mouth muscles ready to easily pronounce English. I try her tip before my shift at the flower shop. In an empty aisle, I softly shadow a gardening show. Moving my lips and tongue carefully along with the host, I prepare to converse about flowers. My first customer interaction goes smoothly. The warm-up shadowing means I pronounce flower names clearly. Our teacher gives us such useful ideas for shadowing. With fun resources for mimic practice combined with her before conversation tip, I know I'll get excellent pronunciation experience daily. My mouth may get sore sometimes, but the hard work is all worth it to speak English perfectly. In week 4, a past student visits our class, Elizabeth from Italy. I remember her from last year when she was just a beginner. But today in conversation, she speaks beautiful, fluent English. Mrs. Smith compliments Elizabeth's progression and asks how she practiced English at home. Elizabeth explains, "I learned some helpful techniques in this school, so I just applied them myself every day." First, Elizabeth did reading and vocabulary building activities using news websites. She also used pronunciation exercises like shadowing podcasts and YouTube videos. But most helpful was the thinking aloud technique she learned here. Elizabeth says, "I started by thinking out loud in very simple English sentences. Even phrases like, 'Today is sunny,' or 'I drank coffee.' I felt silly at first, but it trained my brain to form thoughts directly in English instead of mentally translating from Italian. Over time, her thinking aloud became more complex. Soon, this mental practice combined with other studying helped Elizabeth speak very naturally with native fluency. Friends back home tell her she sounds British. Elizabeth thanks Mrs. Smith for introducing key techniques like thinking aloud last year. Now, Elizabeth hopes sharing her self-study success story will inspire us new students. Her story definitely motivates me. If thinking aloud exercised Elizabeth's English mind that, well, I want to adopt her routine right away. We ask Elizabeth to explain more about thinking aloud and how she used it. She says, thinking aloud means verbally saying your thoughts out loud, even if you're alone. For example, as I cook dinner, I describe my actions in English. She gives us some examples like, first, I boil water in the kettle to make pasta. Now I chop carrots for the salad. I need olive oil, vinegar, and lettuce from the fridge. I'm amazed she narrates such everyday activities to practice. Elizabeth smiles and says at first her family thought she was crazy talking to herself. But over months of thinking aloud routinely, Elizabeth trained her brain to automatically generate thoughts in English instead of Italian. The technique also built her speaking confidence for real conversations. After months thinking aloud, Elizabeth could easily chat with tourists in shops because English sentences came naturally. She didn't hesitate or mentally translate anymore before responding. We all think thinking aloud seems challenging at first. But Elizabeth promises, if you start with simple phrases about your daily life, it gets easier. After 6 months, I felt thoughts form in English like magic. It truly does wonders for fluency training if you practice frequently and increase complexity over time. Her incredible success inspires me to adopt thinking aloud too. If verbalizing mundane actions can wire my brain for English, like Elizabeth, I'm ready to start this crazy technique today. Mrs. Smith thanks Elizabeth for sharing the thinking aloud strategy. She knows it sounds unusual, so she helps clarify the method. Thinking aloud simply means verbalizing your inner thoughts externally, using simple vocabulary and grammar, she explains. For example, Mrs. Smith thinks aloud about her morning. I wake up at 7 a.m. I take a shower, get dressed, then eat breakfast. I eat scrambled eggs and an orange. Hearing Mrs. Smith describe such ordinary activities out loud shows us the basic idea. She says even lingering on simple actions trains our brains to construct sentences directly in English. Over time, this daily practice builds fluency. Elizabeth adds more tips. Yes, just describe your routines, feelings, or household events aloud. If you get stuck on vocab, use basic words you know like big, small, happy, frustrated. I ask Elizabeth, weren't you embarrassed thinking aloud around family at home? She laughs. At first, but I usually practiced alone in my room or went for walks in the park. I just moved my lips silently if others were near. Mrs. Smith suggests we all start thinking aloud for 10 minutes daily this week, increasing to 30 minutes over the next month. Just putting easy thoughts into words will start training our minds. I feel ready to attempt this unusual tactic if it gives such great fluency results, like Elizabeth's. We ask Elizabeth to share some actual thinking aloud sentences she used as a beginner. She gives us simple starter phrases. Today is Monday. It is sunny. I will wear a blue dress outside. Yesterday was fun. I visited my cousins. We ate pasta and gelato. Tomorrow I start English class. I feel nervous but excited to learn. Her early sentences describe basic feelings, clothes, food, family, days of the week. Simply putting any easy thoughts into words trained her brain, even boring details. Over many days, sentences expanded. This weekend, we celebrated my sister's birthday at the park. All my relatives played games and gave presents. Elizabeth confirms. Thinking aloud improved her speaking confidence greatly. Her brain got flexible in constructing English sentences on the spot about any topic, not stuck mentally translating from Italian anymore. Soon, real conversations felt easy because making sentences aloud was natural training. Mrs. Smith says Elizabeth's routine took dedication, but got incredible fluency results. We all agree. If simple thinking aloud exercises wired Elizabeth's brain for fluid speaking after 6 months, then we're ready to follow her training plan. I know describing my basic days and thoughts out loud will feel strange, but I'm motivated to slowly improve if it gives my brain the muscle memory for natural speech too. At the end of class, Mrs. Smith wants to summarize the best techniques we've learned so far from her and Elizabeth's advice. Class, let's review the top tactics for improving your English skills, she says. She writes them on the board. 1. Read interesting stories and look up new vocab words. 2. Shadow audio recordings to practice pronunciation. 3. Think out loud in simple English to train fluent speaking. 4. Have real conversations with patient native speakers. I recommend you try doing each activity for 30 to 40 minutes every day. With fun reading, mimic practice shadowing, weird thinking aloud exercises, plus lots of real dialogues, your overall skills will improve greatly over time. Mrs. Smith encourages us. Elizabeth adds, it was awkward at first for me too, but it got easy with routine. After 6 months, I felt amazed by my progress. Please be consistent practicing this plan daily. Your hard work will definitely pay off too. We all agree. The duo have given us an excellent variety of techniques to raise our comprehension, vocabulary, pronunciation, and conversational abilities. I feel both motivated and reassured, seeing living proof of Elizabeth's English success thanks to these tactics. Our whole class leaves excited to integrate reading, shadowing, thinking aloud, and talking into our routines this term.